All right, so from the top, um, talking today about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is boundaries, both in communication and business, family lives too. Because obviously, Jan and I are married to each other. We're both in the business, so having to sort of draw those lines between, okay, this is family time, this is business time. It can be a delicate balance because we're always on, it seems. I'm a big fan of saying that every day when we wake up, we're unemployed. And, that's great because if you have the entrepreneurial mind, you're like, great, what can I do with this day to make something happen? If you're struggling in developing the entrepreneurial mind, it's a matter of, oh my God, I've got to make money somehow. And so then you are now, sort of struggling with, okay, when does my day end? Because I'm just as guilty as anyone. I've had some brilliant ideas and great communication at 9, 10 o'clock at night, well after the working day. But you got to be judicious in that time. Jan will remember this story. We were selling, or we had coworkers of Jan's at the time who are now dear friends. They were buying a for sale by owner townhouse over in Larkspur almost 20 years ago now. And first time home buyers, very sweet people. And we were not in a market condition where first time home buyer or for sale by owners could really just name a price, sell the house as is, all of that. But this FISBO had it in her mind that she was going to do her own thing. And I think it was, Jan, was it like nearly midnight when the FISBO called me to fuss about something in the contract?
I don't remember the story. Who was this?
This was Danielle Oberg.
Oh, okay.
In the first place that she bought.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
We were living on Little Neck Road, and at that time, we just had a flip phone, and this is why it's almost 20 years ago. Just had a flip phone. There was no way to sort of silence it like you can with an iPhone or whatever. You say, okay, here are the hours that you can ring through this call. So, because my grandfather lived with us at the time, and Jan's mom, and she and her mom are very close. Like, we always had the phone on. So this woman calls after we're in bed and asleep and starts to fuss at me about something that's in the contract or whatever. And I just remember telling her, I said, this is not an acceptable time to discuss business. I'm hanging up on you. And then I turned the phone off, which was probably what I should have done to begin with. The next morning, I woke up to a very irate email, or not an email, voicemail from this seller, FISBO seller, accusing me of God knows what, and just yelling. So I called her attorney and relay everything to the attorney. And I remember very clearly saying, tell this woman to lose my number and never call me again. And she never did. We did go to closing and it was fine. But, that kind of thing, when our clients or anyone else call us after hours, it can really upset things, right? Because I did not get a good night's sleep that night because, that was the last voice I heard before going to bed was her yelling at me, or going back to sleep was her yelling at me. I also remember a time early on in my career, again, we were living on Little Neck Road, and my phone was upstairs in the room over the garage in my office, and I heard it ring. And we were sitting down to dinner, and I flew away from the table and up the stairs and answered the phone. And it was a telemarketer. And, I sort of slinked back to the kitchen table for dinner, and, it was just a mess. So all of that is to say, I've been through things like this. I've had agents here in the office that we've done deals together, and I've had to tell them at 10 o'clock at night when they're calling and trying to negotiate things like, this is not happening right now. I have my nieces and nephew over for a sleepover, and we are sleeping. I will talk to you in the morning. And it's just not everyone has the same sense of decorum and boundaries that we should have. And I think we need to set the pace for that for ourselves, right? Jan and I had a call the other morning, maybe, was it last Friday morning, I think, or maybe it was Monday morning. Agent we're in a deal with, and it's a series of dominoes, and we're in that space now in the market where the person buying this house has to sell that house to buy that house. The person buying this house or selling this house is buying another house. And so there's a lot of interconnectedness, and that's okay. We just work through that with open communication. But at 7:30 in the morning, we got a very panicked, I can't remember if it was a text or voicemail from this
Text.
agent, text, like, what's going on? What's going on? And our reaction, our knee-jerk reaction to that is, let's reply back to the agent. Well, you could do that, but more often than not, at 7:30 in the morning, you don't know anything more than you did at 6 o'clock the night before, right? So just plugging the pacifier back in the baby, that's all it's doing. You want to be able to go back with more than just, we're working on it kind of thing. Also, if you give up that 7:30 to 8:30 hour in your morning, now your day has started. There's no going back. You can't go back to watching GMA and drinking your coffee, or doing whatever you do in the morning, getting kids off to school, or cleaning up the kitchen, or taking a walk with the dog down the street. Your day has started, and there's no going back. You've also given that agent, and any other agent who calls or texts at 7:30 in the morning, license to now call you and do business at 7:30 in the morning, and why not 8 o'clock at night?
Well, she's tried that too.
And she's tried that too. And she's nervous on her side. So I'm a big apologist for other agents, right? Because I was their leader last year, and all of the nutsos were my responsibility. But we don't know what's going on in their world, right? And if we let the other agent spin us up and get us into a panic, that serves nobody, right? So 7:30 in the morning, we set the rule that we would start making the rounds at 8:30, going back to our client to make sure they were squared away, going back to our seller, going back to the buyer's agent for that transaction and say, okay, where are we? What can we expect for this to happen? And then we can go back at 8:30 to the panicked 7:30 agent and say, here's what we know, and have something to show for it. Because literally at 7:30 Monday morning, we knew nothing more than we did at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m. the night before. It's just that she woke up in a panic and wanted to transfer that panic to us. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Because if anything, I am calm, cool, and collected. And in business, Jan, shut up. So, we've got to maintain that control and that decorum, because as soon as we start saying, like, well, I'll make this exception here, I'll make this exception here, we've got to be very careful with the exceptions, because if we let one exception happen, then other exceptions happen. Especially with our clients, if we respond to them at 10 o'clock at night, they're now going to expect that we can respond to them every night at 10 o'clock at night, because that's when their mind has wandered and gone back to whatever they're nervous about with their transaction. So some of this is setting your phone to do not disturb, and you can set schedules on it, right? My phone, the only time my phone rings overnight is if it's somebody who's on my favorites list. And that's like less than 10 people. And I have it set to 9 o'clock at night. It goes into do not disturb, and it comes off do not disturb at 8 in the morning. Now, I'm not necessarily going to take every call at 8 in the morning, but at least then, I'm at least, I've had a cup of coffee. I'm ready to begin my day, even though my day might not have started by that point, or I may be doing other things related to business. But I do recommend Dr. Henry Cloud's book, Boundaries. He was at Peak Experience, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. And he's really good. It's like a lot of these authors, he gets a little Jesus-y in places, saying like, well, the Bible says this, but this, this other study says that. But overall, his message is good, that, you have to find creative ways of saying yes to certain things and no to certain things, and give some relevant examples of how to do that. Of course, it's not all real estate related, but, I think it's worthwhile to say that boundaries are important. right? And we see this in our personal lives too. Teachers at school, neighbors, things like that. And I think people really appreciate when you just calmly respond to them and say, I'm not in a position to answer or have this conversation right now. I need to do, and give them a reason. I need to do a little more research. I need to talk to a few more people. Um, Thank you for this. Let me go work on this and I'll get back with you and set a time. I'll get back with you no later than close of business today. And then do it. And it all circles back to communication, right? And just making sure that, we're communicating what has been given to us, what we're communicating to our clients and other agents that we're working with, and in setting clear expectations about what happens next. I've gotten very much in the habit recently in the last few years of like, okay, yes, here's where we are. Here's what happened to get us to where we are now. Here's what I'm doing right now. Here's what I need you to do right now. Here's what we expect to happen next, or what we're going to do next, and then what we expect to happen next. And just laying that out, and I've ended a lot of phone calls with saying, okay, we all have a lot of homework to do. Are you okay on your side? Yep, we got it. Okay, good. Call me, text me if you have any questions or you hit a wall, right? And I find that, setting those expectations and setting guardrails on things really helps. And of course, calm, cool, patient voice, right? Here's what's happened. Here's where we are. Here's what needs to be done. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I need you to do. What do you need from me? Here's what's happening next. Here's what we expect as a result, right? And I think that's a very clear formula for making sure that the transaction stays on track. And I've used that dialogue with agents, with attorneys, with buyers, with sellers, with home inspectors, everybody, right? It's like, okay, just to recap. And sometimes, like if you have vendors that are working on things for you, they don't know the why that gets you to that point of panicking, like, oh my God, I need you over here right now. So you just need to take a breath, roll back and say, okay, here's what's happened. Here's the problem. I really need your help with the problem. And in an ideal world, and we often say if we could wave the magic wand, I would have you here right now. And especially with vendors, I've gotten to the point with some of them, it's like, if you can't do this right now, let me know because you're my first call. I can call somebody else, but I want to give the business to you. And sometimes they say, I just can't do it. We're slammed right now. We're booked solid. Okay, fine. Thank you. I'll call you for the next job. I prefer to work with you first. But sometimes when there's an urgency to things, you just got to keep rolling. So I have a plumber out in Suffolk yesterday that was my conversation with him. It's like, okay, the water heater's broken. I need you if you can fit it into your schedule. I would prefer to work with you first. If you can't do it, that's fine. I'll get you for the next job. But this is a crisis in this moment because the water heater has decided to just die, right? Water heaters never tell you they're going to die. They just die. So, he couldn't do it. We moved on, and that's fine. But make sure you set clear boundaries. When you onboard new clients, tell them, I sit down to dinner at 7 and I'm done for the day at that point. Feel free to call me, feel free to text me, feel free to email me, but you may not get a call until the next day. Say, hey, I get up and, I have my morning routine and, I'm usually like in the saddle and ready to start working by 8:30, 9:00, 9:30, whatever your day is, whatever they call it, your personal business standard. Feel free to call me at 2 a.m. You're not going to get me because my phone will be off, but leave a message, send me a text. I'll get back to you as soon as I sit down at my desk in the morning. And they respect that. You should also feel confident in saying to them that you got to make them feel like they're your only client, but they also have to understand that they're not your only client, right? And we very frequently will say, Especially when a client calls us, we have the autoresponders on our text. We say, hey, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back in a moment. Hey, I'm showing property. I'll call you back as soon as I can. I have a lot of clients that they start to mimic some of my conversation because, I have some busy clients. We all have busy clients. I'll say, hey, no urgency, but when you have a few minutes, let me know and we'll set up a time to chat later. I have some updates. Now, if I went out there and said, I need to talk to you, when can you talk? That's bad news, right? That makes everyone choke a little bit. But if you just say, in recognition, I know that you're busy and probably working, let me know sometime today when you have a few minutes to chat. We'll line up our schedules. I have some updates for you. And if they come back, oh my God, what's going on? It's like, well, if you can chat now, I can chat now. Let's chat now. Or you can say, you know what? Just updates. No hair on fire emergency. I have no hair to burn. No hair on fire emergency. Just want to bring you up to speed about what's going on and what's happening next. And most of them are fine. And now I get texts from my clients going, hey, when you have a few moments, call us this afternoon. Great, fine. Yesterday I was at urgent care. Somehow I found a way to, get poison ivy while I've been nowhere near nature in over a week. And so I was at urgent care and I said, hey, I'm at urgent care with some poison ivy. I'll call you as soon as I'm out. I did, and now our conversation was, oh, well, there's this home remedy that I have for, like, okay, thank you. We've solved my problems. What can we do to help you now? And they're like, oh, we just had a question about move out and this, that, and the other. Their question wasn't urgent. Our conversation wasn't urgent, but they have mimicked the same process that I have used on them. It's like, hey, you guys are probably busy. I'm in a meeting for the next half hour, but I need to chat with you about X, Y, and Z a little bit later on. Let me know when is a good time. And we go forward. And that's setting clear boundaries for people. Here's how I'd like it to go. Now, that's not a perfect solution in every situation, right? Because you will have clients that just keep coming at you, right? And we've had that. And you kind of have to roll with these things individually, but not every volley is deserving of a return, right? If you look at tennis, you'll see the ball come across the net. And if the tennis player can scramble and break their neck to get there, they'll try. But sometimes the ball comes too fast and too far off field or off base that it would do more harm for me to try and get over there and hit the ball back than to just let it go out of bounds, let them have the point. So be judicious in your hair on fire emergencies. We are the trained professionals. We are the ones that need to maintain control of the conversation, of the transaction, of our clients. I know we've seen many times, we're dealing with other agents, and it's very clear that the client is driving the bus and not the agent. And that hurts my feelings a little bit because those clients are rude. Perhaps the agent is a little undertrained, maybe some low self-esteem they need to work on. Maybe they're too scared to not make the money, so they do whatever the client tells them, and no matter how insane that is. So, we just have to, and sometimes we have to coach up the other agent on, like, hey, I know this is the way it is. And I've had clients like that. I remember having to have a conversation with one of our Williamsburg agents a few years ago. I had the buyer, and the buyer was being a little unreasonable with the home inspection. And he was threatening to walk away from the deal and blow everything up literally at the 11th hour. And the sellers of this townhome he was buying already had a contract on another place. And so we were, multiple dominoes there. And I remember going to the listing agent going, it's like, all right, you know me. So what I'm about to tell you is not from me. It's from my client. So please take that with a grain of salt. And I then said, this is what the buyer wants, da, da, da. And then we had a very candid conversation of, are you effing kidding me? And on and on, like, yes, I am not effing kidding you. This is, I'm happy to show you screenshots of, the headspace that my buyer is in and what he's demanding. And he is willing to blow this whole thing up. We got through it intelligently, responsibly, respectfully. agent to agent. And it just so happened this was an agent I knew, and we could have that sort of candid conversation. Again, protecting my client's interest, her protecting her client's interest, but we got through it. And I knew that the message I was going to deliver was going to make her blow her top, and her sellers were going to blow their tops, and everyone blew their tops. But I set the stage like, okay, this is not me. This is my client, and and it was just a mess, but we got through it. And having those types of conversations are good. So that brings me to my next book, Crucial Conversations, by all kinds of people: Patterson, Grady, McMillan, and Switzler. This is a great book as well. And actually, I have an extra copy if anybody wants it. It's Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High. We actually took this up in another conference I did a few years back. And it's great in that it teaches you how to develop rapport. They give you some case studies of some things. It's very much business related, but it does work well for interpersonal relationships. Like real estate is mostly interpersonal relationships. And it's a way that they give you tools in here on how to soften delivery. It teaches you how to pause in response to what someone is saying, right? What's the quote is, so often we listen not to understand, but we listen to respond. And they take that up in here too, because if we're looking at, okay, you're saying your piece, I'm going to make sure I say my piece. You haven't listened to understand. And that is crucial to the conversation, to the advancement of the dialogue, is that you need to sometimes just listen, absorb, and say, I understand. I get where you're coming from. I appreciate that point of view. There's also active listening. Have we come across this before? We do know what active listening is. It's when we're in conversation with someone, and this is great for sitting down with buyers, especially first-time home buyers. When they say, this is what I want, or this is the situation, repeat it back to them. So if I understand, if I'm hearing you correctly, if I understand, you say you want this, want that, want that. No, that's not what I said. Okay, glad I asked. Let's clear this up. Tell me again what you're looking for. Tell me again how this works. And that's very important too. And that gets back to that other conversation dialogue I had of, okay, here's what's happened. Here's where we are. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. What do you need from me? Let's move forward, kind of thing. And that fits in great. It's like, okay, if I understand correctly, this is what we're trying to accomplish, right? I'll do this, especially I'll do this with Amanda Sands at Shaheen Law. It's like, okay, let me make sure I got this right. Because the last thing I want to do is go off half-cocked with a legal opinion and I didn't have it right. And so I do that a lot with her because, making sure I'm making good use of that resource and having her on the phone. And we had a conversation with clients at the closing table the other day. They had to patch me in from Denver at a conference. And, I kind of felt like I was not necessarily refereeing the conversation, but maybe coaching it along, because, our clients had elevated stress levels. Amanda, all she knew was the contract in front of her. She didn't know any of the backstory. Jan was in the room hand holding and, moral support. And, I was helping to bring these threads together, and Jan was filling in, because she's been on the front line with some of this. It's like, okay, here's what we saw. Here's what they did. Here's what they did, kind of thing. And then I would ask, okay, so this is what we want to happen. How do we make that happen? And then Amanda would give an explanation. I'm like, great. So if I hear you correctly, this is what you're saying. And then she's like, yes, I'll write it out for you in an email. Perfect, even better. But now we at least have some mental notes. We'll have written notes. The clients have heard it. We have heard it. And we can move forward. So these are some very, I wouldn't necessarily call them soft skills in the business, but I think that they are very important skills to have in any relationship, whether it's business, personal, working with the HOA, working with your neighbors, working with Major League Soccer or US Super League Soccer or whatever, just being able to say, okay, I just want to make sure I hear you right. here are the boundaries, here's the expectation. Right? 'Cause I know in your contract for Charlotte, like, okay, we're at this point now, we expect to hear by Friday. And they were clear in those communications of, here's the expectation. And if you're not going to hit the expected timeline, you owe it to everyone to call, not at 7:30 in the morning, but you owe it to everyone to call them and say, okay, I know we said we'd have this sorted out by 10:30 on May 14th. We're still missing some information. I'm still waiting to hear back from so-and-so. I have a call out. I have an email in. The attorney is waiting for the title binder, whatever. You can always have concrete explanations for why we're in the position that we are and not where we intended to be. And, if you have those crucial conversations, then you will be successful in that, just that conversation thing, but hopefully in the whole transaction. So now I want to open it up. Does anyone have any questions about boundaries, crucial conversations?
I have a thought and kind of an observation. One client that we served a year or so ago commented that one of the great things about how we communicated with them is we reached out to them when there was nothing to say.
Mm-hmm.
And just said, hey, no updates, but just wanted to make you aware that we're awaiting, and just a status update. But there was nothing really to say.
I'm calling to report. I have nothing to report. And sometimes, they'll have other questions. Oh, well, what about? Nope, still waiting on an answer. Nope, still waiting on an answer. Or it's like, okay, great. I was just wondering, and especially with buyers, once you've had the home inspection and then you ratify the PICRA, there's kind of a lull until you get to walk through. So, you need to communicate that with them. It's like, okay, once we figure out and agree on everything with the repair addendum, it's going to be kind of quiet between you and me until we get to walk through. But what you need to be doing now is making sure you stay in communication with the lender to get them all their documentation they request. So don't lag on any of that, because if you lag on it, then the lender calls me, then I call you. And that's not going to be a good conversation. And most of them laugh, and it's like, okay, but just letting them know, it's like, okay, once we ratify the PICRA, it's a little quiet between you and me. We're kind of in a lull waiting for them to do repairs. If we have HOA docs or condo docs, I'll be in touch. Or, if there's something that pops up with repairs that we want, some guidance on, we'll reach out to you. But yeah, we often call and say, hey, nothing to report. One way to look at this, house plants, right? How many times have you checked on a house plant? Doesn't need any water, doesn't need any leaves pulled off of it, it's fine. You still check on it, right? Stick your finger in the soil. It's like, are we like bone dry, or is it damp enough? Okay, just checking, nothing to do. Okay, move on. It's that kind of thing. If we look at this as a business of we sow seeds, we reap what we harvest, we got to check on our crops from time to time. Make sure they're getting the nutrients they need, the attention they need, things like that. Any other thoughts or questions? Boundaries, crucial conversations. Kim, I'm curious, because you're in medical device sales as your prior career, if I remember. What is your
Home health physical therapy?
home health physical therapy? I knew it was something where you're dealing with people
Yes.
up close. Have you had any of these types of conversations where it can get, because what I have found in the past is our previous careers often inform a lot of what we do in real estate. So I'm wondering if you have seen any things, any lessons you have learned in the field in this prior career of yours that's like, oh, I can see how that would translate to real estate.
Yes, just setting boundaries up front, because you'll have patients calling you, texting you, 10 o'clock at night, midnight.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to set that expectation up at front to say, if you, after business hours, after 5, if you have any questions or concerns, you can call the main number, because we have like a 24-hour service that they can leave a message on, that your triage nurse would call them back. But I was like, unless you need to cancel, just call during normal business hours. So kind of setting it up
Right.
up front. And
And
they
like
don't
with anything,
really like us to give our number out, just because if they call us, because they'll call you on the weekend. I'm like,
right.
it sounds like an emergency. You probably need to go to the emergency room, but so they don't even like that because I don't want to take responsibility for someone that I
Sure.
didn't answer the call and something happened. So,
Right. Yeah,
but
no, that's good. I'm sure, as you alluded to, as with every other medical field, if this is indeed an emergency, call 911 or go to the emergency room.
right. Yeah.
Um, so that brings up a good point. In real estate is, Jan has asked me many times, and other agents that I've trained over the years have asked me many times, how are you so calm with this? And my answer invariably is like, no one's going to die.
Right.
If you start at that level and sort of work back on the diagnosis, is this life or death?
Mhm.
No. Okay. Everything from there is easy,
Right.
right? If the house is burning down, then we need to get the fire department over there immediately. If someone has fallen and cracked their skull open, we need to get an ambulance over there immediately. That's life or death.
Mhm.
Someone not getting what they want in a home inspection repair is not life or death. Someone not getting the asking price they wanted is not life or death. It is disappointing. It's like a knife to the heart, but that proverbial metaphoric knife to the heart is not going to kill them.
Mhm.
And so everything from there is early. And I learned that in college because I was, one of those kids that I get spun up over everything years ago. And, I remember, Jan, you'll remember Patty Williams. She pulled me aside and she taught me two lessons, very lovingly, but very firmly that day. And she says, none of this is life or death. If it's a life or death situation, that's something else. But answer that question: is anyone going to die? No. And everything else is easy. And the other one was stay in your lane.
Mhm.
And I still struggle with that one sometimes because I'm in a lot of lanes. But especially in real estate, we have to stay in our lane and maintain client confidentiality on our part.
Mhm.
But sometimes we have to share just enough to get that emotional buy-in of the other agent or the buyers or whatever. And we flex on that a lot. It's like, okay, well, they're trying to get their kids registered for school, and that's why we want to close on this date so they can have the closing document to say, that they're here, they live here, they can get into the school and get registered, right? That I think is reasonable. That's not going to violate their trust, because that is their driving force for getting into that house, or whatever their wants are. Ideally, they have to pull the cash out of this house in order to purchase the next house. So yes, we need the rent back, or yes, we need this timeline or that timeline. So we have to stay in those lanes, but every now and again we can change our lanes a little bit to make things happen. Any other thoughts or questions, examples with boundaries or crucial conversations? I like, Jenny has just written in all caps, life or death. And that's what it is. And I think I used that with the Neviuses with you.
Yes.
Because we had clients a few years ago that they were just bonkers. There are so many things I could say about them, but bonkers would be the polite thing. And it was nerve-wracking. We were trying to pull them off the ceiling. I had to pull Jenny off the ceiling. We were trying to pull the other several agents that we worked. We were trying to pull them off the ceiling.
Meanwhile, Jeremy's just.
Well, they were chaos agents. Both the husband and the wife, these clients of ours, were chaos agents, and that they would create crises, manufacture these crises, so that they were clearly the victim, and then they would demand almost a literal pound of flesh out of everyone else in the transaction. And it was just horrendous. But one of us had to stay calm, cool, and collected in the transaction. It was like, all right, just So is it life or death? No. Yes, I may kill them, but no, it's not truly life or death just yet. And, there were lots of cocktails consumed at the end of every day during that.
Yes. Oh, we say that. That's what alcohol. That's why they invented
Exactly.
alcohol. Breweries.
Absolutely. River Beach, bring the dogs.
Right.
So, but do we feel like we have good action steps on this? Kim, if you want this book, I can put it in your box upstairs.
Yeah, I would like to read it. Yeah, and I can give it back to you.
Well, it's an extra, so give it to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
If you don't want to hold on to it and you want to pass it on to someone else, pass it on, because I have my copy plus an extra.
Oh,
See,
okay.
this is the problem of having an office at the office and an office at home, is I will, and you've seen this very readily, like even upstairs I have multiple copies of the same book, but I pulled this one from home this morning, and as I was looking for another book here at the office, oh, look, I have another copy. So I'm happy to share these extras that I have with people, so I'll put that in your box.
Thank you.
Kind of thing. So as always, if anyone gets stuck with, how to set boundaries or how to have a difficult conversation, I'm really good with difficult conversations. Shut up, Jan. And
Carefrontation, remember we
carefrontation. Who did we learn that from?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think the new buzzword now is this is a carefrontation. Kevin Buffini.
That's right.
Kevin Buffini, Brian Buffini's brother. These difficult conversations, like I care about you, but this is a confrontation as well. So this is a carefrontation.
I like it.
Yeah, sometimes you're going to care them right around the neck, but yeah, just stay measured. Not every communication in the moment deserves a response in that moment, and texting is probably the most urgent form of communication. And feel free to set it aside. Turn off your red receipts on your text, so it just says delivered, and that way they don't know if you've read it. That's something that I know that you're doing now, aren't you?
Yes.
That's something I think that the kids these days, they just think about, oh my God, they left me on red. He must hate me.
Oh yeah, that's all I hear.
Yeah, turn off the damn read receipts, and then it's been delivered,
Right.
but you don't know if they've read it, because if somebody reads it and then they don't respond right away, now you're getting all spun up in your head, right? So yeah, and then the other trick, I know I've showed this in one class. If you open a text message, if you go back out to the text messages and you slide to the right on it, where'd it go? It marks it as unread.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now if you slide to the left, you can delete it.
Okay.
Don't do that. But if you slide to the right, it marks it as read or unread. So there's a lot of text message that, it's like, oh, I need to respond back to them later. I'm in the car, I'm at a stoplight, I'm in a meeting, I need to go look for a piece of information, can't come back to it. So I'll just swipe it on, because they don't know that I've read it, but I'll swipe on it to mark it as unread, so that in a few minutes I can come back to it. And I think I have one from yesterday that I need to respond to, but but that's one way, because then when you look at your text messages, oh, I have 4 text messages to respond to. Well, some of those are brand new in the last few minutes. Some of them are ones that I've marked to follow up on. So there's your hints from Heloise for today. All right. So I will see everyone next time. We have a jet going over, so perfect time to end the call.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.